All right. Welcome everyone for the TTC meetup, and this is the third season we are kicking off. And this time we thought that we'll do it a little differently, so we've made it theme-based. And the first theme that we are picking up is test craftsmanship, and there are a lot of things to be covered under test craftsmanship, and so we thought that let's get started with testability. Let's get started with a discussion around the testability. So before I get any further, I would like to know from people who are in the call, your understanding of what testability is or could be. So who wants to go first? Sandeep, maybe you? Am I audible?
Yeah, Brijesh, you're audible.
Yeah, so yeah, what is your understanding of testability? Anybody?
Can I have a go at it?
Yeah, by all means, yes.
Right. So testability to me means that how easy, difficult, convenient, on what level, or how would I assess an attribute of a system under test as being testable? How would I convince myself that I could test it? What sort of activities would I need to do to convince me that I could test something? And sometimes, from my experience, most of the things I've come across when I assess their testability, some of them do come across as very hilarious. I once had, as part of the requirement on one of my projects years ago, that the test professional are appropriately dressed. What does that mean? What is being appropriately dressed? And the first thing I did was look around my team, trying to see who is not appropriately dressed. And then I was just asking them, what does that mean? Even though we could claim that we could test it, but it makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because me being appropriately dressed has nothing to do with the system under test.
Mm-hmm.
So testability means things that we could possibly test, things that we could possibly not test. We need to know how to identify them. So that is my understanding of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else? Sandeep, you're on camera, so maybe you. So.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. The way I understand testability is how easy it is to test the application.
Mm-hmm.
How easy it is to retrieve the information that I'm looking for. And asking for that is one of the most important job of my role in the team. So yeah, that's my understanding of testability.
Yeah, it's a very simple definition, Sandeep. It's just how easy it is to test. How easy is the application to test? And of course, it has different connotations. Yeah, different parameters, different things.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But in a very simple manner, this is how it could be described.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different take or different opinion on that. I see Mahesh has joined the call. Hey, Mahesh.
Hi, Brijesh.
So since you're already unmuted, What's your take on testability?
Testability is like cookability, right? I mean, if I'm a cook, whether I have everything to cook, right? Vegetables, spices, salt, gas stove, gas. That's my notion of testability.
Refreshingly different take, but conveys a lot of meaning. So basically, the reason why I wanted to bring this topic today is because we have a lot of conversations around testing, and we talk about what should we do, what tools do we use, what languages do we learn, and all kinds of conversations. But this is one subject which is not discussed very often. And if we look at the top challenges that projects go through or people go through while testing, one of the biggest challenges is, of course, testability of the application. Okay, and testability could be, of course, from the perspective of the application that you're testing, the design that is being done, if you are at that phase, or if you are still coding and you're not started to think about it, you can think of testability from that perspective as well, right? So there are multiple things to look at when you're looking for testability, and there are multiple ways to address the question of testability. Now, Seema, you and I were talking the other day, and you mentioned something about an application being difficult to understand or operate by the user. Now, is that something that you would want to think of from a testability perspective? What's your thought around that, Seema?
So quite often, I don't think as easy as the term testability is, I don't think we actually use it on or regularly use it on a day-to-day basis. We're ready to go, ready for refinement sessions. We're sitting there, we'll say how many test cases we'll do or how we will test. Not many times do we ask the question, can I test it? How can I test it? How is it testable? Can we look at the logs? Can we look at any monitoring systems? Can I look at, is it accessible through any other forms other than looking at code or the UI itself? Not the regular way of, okay, there's a UI, you can look at it. Other than that, what else can I do? How can I find defects or find that something's not working without straightforward looking at it and understanding? It's not just the flows. Sometimes it can be something else. It can be something deeply hidden in the architecture. So the ability to uncover all those kind of problems is what testability is. And I have this major problem in where a lot of people don't ask for it. If someone says this is not testable, we just keep quiet.
It sums up quite a lot of things that go around testability. Now, what Sandeep spoke about is actually one aspect of testability. I mean, how simple is the application for me to understand? So simplicity is one of the aspects of testability. Now, Seema brings in another angle, and if I may put it, one of the things that she mentioned was, are there any monitoring tools or is there logging enabled? So how is the observability in that application? Am I able to observe the application and get more information out of it? Because at the end of the day, testing is about gathering information. It is not just finding defects, right? So observability is one aspect that we can obviously talk about. Then the another aspect that I can think about is decomposability of the application. Can you break it down into pieces which are logical in nature, which can be, understood very easily. Okay, so decomposability is another aspect where you can, drill down in logical steps. So you can obviously be asking the next logical question and saying, okay, this is the problem. So what next? And if you can do that, if you can decompose the application in that manner, then it is testable, is what I would think. Okay. And then, of course, we spoke about simplicity, we spoke about, and then there is another aspect, and this is to do with controllability. Now, controllability is a very, how should I say? Are we able to analyze the behavior of that product with regards to the different kind of inputs it's going to get from different users? How does it interact, or how does it respond to the behavior that a particular user has towards it? Will determine the controllability of the application, and that is one more aspect. Okay, and then of course you have the most famous one, which is bugs. Okay, a lot of times bugs make an application untestable. If there are too many of them, then it is absolutely untestable, right? So for example, one of the most horrible applications when it comes to testability is LinkedIn. Famous for all kinds of bugs it has in the system. And sometimes, a functionality you think may work very easy, it looks very simple. So it may get us a tick mark on simplicity, on observability, on decomposability, but somewhere the control is missing because the user can't interact because there are a lot of bugs in the system. Okay, one bug is blocking a particular feature or a series of features which you can't access, which means that you can't test further. Okay, so that's another aspect. Now, this is on a very high level, my understanding, but I would like to understand from all of you, if you have any other take or any other view on this. So I want to open the discussion. I mean, Mahesh, Teapot, Casey, what are your thoughts?
So where does feature branching or feature toggling or A/B testing, where does that fall into?
From a testability perspective?
Yeah. Because feature toggling is also one of the aspects of how
yes.
Apart from many other reasons.
Yeah, so feature toggling, I would generally put it under observability. I mean, that's based on my understanding. I may be wrong there. Okay, because you are making the system more observable by toggling certain features. You can zero in and look at certain features, focus with making use of that feature toggle, right? You turn one feature on and you can observe the behavior or the interaction of that feature. So you're making it more observable. So I think on a very broad level, it can be covered under the umbrella of observability, but there may be deeper aspects to it as well. So yeah. Mahesh, you want to add something?
Yeah, one thing is, with all the modernization and digital world that we are heading towards, right? I mean, this is my personal opinion. I think testability is becoming less of a challenge compared to what it was decades back, right? For example, right, with the cloud, right, you could spin up whatever you want and have testability component addressed, so that you don't have lot of challenges that we used to have in the past, right? I mean, like for example, take that somebody is building a serverless application, right? It's easy to kind of replicate on the cloud, because with all the infrastructure as a code and everything, environments are becoming less and less of a challenge. But testability could still be a challenge where hardware components are involved, like the 5G rollout that is happening, right? I mean, that could be, testability could have some kind of challenges still there. And also I recall in one of the conversations, James back explaining about a component where they had to test, and the component was costing millions of dollars, and you could not afford to get a new component, because it's all about money, right? So testability would be challenging in those kind of scenarios, right? But given the world that we are in today, testability is becoming less and less of a challenge compared to how it was in the past. And also the point about feature toggling, A/B testing, and whatnot. Testability around that is also less of a challenge today, right? Again, thanks to the cloud and the technology that we have, it's very easy to test on the prod these days. Spin up a replica of the environment, deploy your code, conduct feature toggling or A/B testing, and also, like Brijesh mentioned, bring in monitoring and observability. Continue to do that. You also have mocking traffic systems, which could actually mock your production traffic and relate on a different environment, so that you can observe even before you release a product, how is that going to behave, right? So in that aspect, testability definitely is less of a challenge compared to earlier times. But I would also like to, make use of this meeting to understand, what are some of the challenges that we are facing in testability today, right? That would also help us, are there ways that we could, alleviate the testability challenge that we have today, and also look beyond, some of the traditional ways that we have to address the testability part of it. So,
Right. Yeah, Mahesh, you spoke about something really interesting. So you're right that comparatively testability of products has improved. If I look at my own journey as a tester over the past 2 decades, I would say that 2 decades ago it was a nightmare. Now it's much better, and thanks to good practices like monitoring and observability being brought in, because that gives us a lot of freedom in terms of understanding the system better and making it more testable. And you also touched upon a very interesting aspect of testability, and that is availability, which is one of the small pieces. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that. So availability of the system, availability of the tools that you can use for testing is also one of the aspects of testability. The availability of a tester is also an important aspect. Sometimes, we don't think about it from a testability perspective, but a skilled tester who knows or who is aware of a particular thing is also a challenge at times. And I think that would also be, or that should also be considered as one of the things or one of the elements when we are talking about testability. We don't look at it from that perspective. We simply say, oh, resource is not available, but ultimately it's a challenge on testability, right? So thinking about it from that perspective. Anything else anybody wants to add?
So, yeah, hi Brijesh, this is Casey here.
Yeah, Casey.
So, yeah, with respect to testability, what I understand is like you're going to take some experiment or a research, and you are going to basically do some research or an experiment on a hypothesis or a theory that you had encountered as part of your requirements. So this is pretty much something like I had seen in most of the e-commerce companies where they are following it actually. So in the past, some of the big companies where I worked, so the way how they work is like they take some most common features which customers are using, and they try to basically increase the GMV. So in order to increase the GMV, instead of basically going ahead and directly implementing the feature and releasing it to production, they really don't know whether the product is going on to be successful, or it is going to get be a disaster as well. So what they're going to do is like they come up with something called as A/B testing. So you might be hearing about the experimentation part actually. So where they basically take that feature and release it to some of the customers and see how they are basically liking it, and they get the feedback and they keep monitoring it, and they see how the GMV is growing and all those factors. So you might have seen all these things even in even with bigger companies as well. Nowadays they are doing actually, like Facebook, when they introduced their new UI, actually they had done the same process. Actually, they had released this new UI only to a certain set of people actually. So later they basically rolled out to a different set of people based on the feedback or how the people are using it, and yeah, a bunch of these factors actually. So A/B testing is one key major thing which plays an important role in testability.
Yeah, Casey, I think the situation that you just referred to, Facebook is a good example. Is basically the Canary Testing, where you release the product to a certain group of users to collect feedback, and then you broaden the user base based on the feedback and the improvements that you've made, and then finally you release it to the whole set. I think there was I don't know, Mahesh, I think you wrote an article recently on LinkedIn, if I'm correct, on the different kinds of tests that you could do on.
Right. It had that.
Yeah, you did it. I think a couple of days ago or something like that.
Yes.
I was like, wow, this is good stuff. And where I recall you mentioned, Canary Test. You mentioned about the rolling deployment. You also, I think, mentioned about shadow test as well, and A/B testing. And I think there was one more. Was it the blue-green that you also spoke about?
Yeah, blue-green.
Yeah, so those things are, so these are certain practices. You're absolutely right, Mahesh, in telling that the way we look at testability that have prompted us to go ahead with these kind of approaches to test it in production. Initially, long time ago, there was a tendency of the testers to think, oh, I have tested it, it's deployed in production, my job is over. Okay, there was this thought process, but over a period of time, we have seen how important it is to test in production and utilize that feedback to improve the overall testability of the product. So, it's all about feedback. Testability has got a very close relationship. Now, talking about it, I remember Michael Bolton in a talk talking something about value-related or testability. Now, that was a very important aspect that he spoke about, and from what I recall of that conversation, he spoke about the readiness of our test oracle. Okay, do we have it in place? Do we have all the aspects of it available? I don't remember the whole thing. It was quite some time back, so I don't know if any of you has come across that. I'm just trying to recall. But anyways, I remember it briefly as value-related testability. Let me just try and see if I can find something. And let me very quickly. Oh yeah, there it is. It's on his blog page itself. Not very difficult to find. Okay, so I will share that with you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Do you see it? You see my screen?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can.
So this is a beautiful article, Heuristics of Software Testability by James, but I somehow found it on DevelopSense website. So where he's spoken about, and this is a good way of looking at testability. So he's talking about epistemic testability, which is how narrow is the gap between what we know and what we need to know about the status of the product. Of course, based on the epistemology idea. Okay, and then project-related testability, where you have things like resources and stuff. Then you have the value-related testability. This is what I was talking about. Okay, and then you have subjective testability, which is influenced by changing the tester or the test process, and then you have, of course, intrinsic testability. And here, what I was actually talking about is actually mentioned here, and that is only one of the things. So there's quite a bit that even I need to catch up. And this is, value-related testability, where he speaks about oracle availability. So do we know enough about our test oracles? Okay, and is there do we have authority in terms of the oracle, the usability, the stability and unity, user familiarity? So how, coming to the situation that I was talking about, if the user is not able to use any particular application at all, then what do we make out of it? And that's where user familiarity is one very interesting aspect. And then, of course, looking further, we have the subjective testability, where it's product knowledge, technical knowledge, domain knowledge, which these are subjective things. People have different levels of understanding of the product, of the domain, and then the skill is different. Okay, your strategies are different, the way you look at testing. So that's there. And then the aspects that I was talking about, which is covered under intrinsic testability, which is observability, controllability, decomposability. Okay, smallness, of course, how small it is. That's also unbugginess, that is less number of bugs. Some of the things that I spoke about. So it's interesting to see that it has been categorized under intrinsic testability. So this is a new learning for me as well. Maybe I need to go with this article. Good that I found it. Of course, you can find it on Michael's website in the resources thing. Testability.pdf. That's one thing. Okay, so there is a very interesting book that has been written on testability by Rob Meany and Ash Winter, and that book is called Team Guide to Software Testability.
But one thing I wanted to ask this group is, Brijesh, the document that you showed, what Michael Bolton has written, that's a very extensive document.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to read that. Yeah. But one question I had was, how do you and how are we measuring the testability part? Are you guys doing something around that? Like, for example, if you take Michael Bolton's document, how are you ensuring and how are you measuring everything that Michael Bolton has written? Or do we say that, okay, so we are, doing a project, and we're going to ensure that we have test cases, test management, resources, budgeting all available. So that concludes that we are good with testability. So.
No, I see. So number one, it is the heuristic of testability. So heuristic is followable. It is not necessary that it has to be absolutely accurate. Okay, so there is a chance of failure that goes with it. Okay, because it's a heuristic. So it's just to guide you towards what you can do. not every aspect of testability mentioned in that document will be applicable to you. Okay, so to determine or to measure, it is a very good question, and I think this needs to be discussed. So yeah, I would like to hear perspectives here. Seema, how can you measure testability?
I don't think I'm at a stage where I can even measure testability. I think just bringing awareness in the team that you should think about testability even before something is being built is a huge challenge. I don't see that question being asked very often. So to Mahesh's question about what can we do about improving, I think that needs to go out first. Ask that question, how can I test this? What can I do about it? That comes much later in probably sometimes when a bug is found in production, or sometimes after everything is being built. What do I do now? How do I test? That question doesn't come much before when we're planning the project or when we're building it initially, even before the code is being built in. How can we test this? Can you make it testable? That question doesn't come, and that awareness is also missing in a lot of places that I've noticed.
This reminds me of a very interesting conversation I was having with an architect, I think 4 years ago. And so we were in a meeting discussing, the product architecture, and he was trying to explain. And so I asked him, did he consider testability as one of the things while he was, building that architecture? And he scratched his head and said, why do I need to bother about it? That was the response that I got. And I was like, if you don't think of testability while designing a solution, then you are always going to have problems and you're going to play a catch-up game trying to make it testable. Okay, so testability needs to be baked in right from the design phase to your architecture here. I mean, probably when you're writing your requirements, are those requirements actually testable? Is a question that I would ask. So when I am studying my requirements, looking at the user stories, I would go ahead and ask, is it really testable? So we tend to apply SMART for goals. Try and apply the same SMART for requirements, and replace the T, which is time bound, to make it testable. Is it simple? Is it measurable? Is it achievable? Is it reliable? Is it testable? Is the question that I would go ahead and ask. Okay, so that's one thing that I do, and I have had challenges in terms of getting responses from development teams, from product owners. If something is actually testable very early. So your point is very valid. We talk about being able to join early and test early and things like that, but we play very little attention to what testability actually is and what can be done about it. So yeah, that's one of the things that we want to consider. Well, Shiva, you haven't spoken, so would like to know your thoughts.
I'm just Brijesh. Thanks for asking me for that. But with my experience, I think I'm just trying to understand the professionals here who are sharing it. Maybe it's Seema, Sandeep, or Mahesh. I'm just trying to understand what is testability. Honestly, this is my first time I'm listening about that. Okay. It's hardly that some companies really, as Mahesh was asking or Seema was saying that, is it that the companies are really implementing it? I never seen someone follow that kind of approach or the way they do it. But it's where I'm learning a new thing. So I'm just listening from your experienced people here.
So a question for you, Shiva. So on Monday when you return to work, is this a question that you're going to ask? Hey, is this application testable?
Yes, Brijesh. But first of all, I had the same thought in my mind. How to approach to my manager or my team? Is it testable? Because we're going to have a sign off on 19th with our monthly release, and we have the sign off for this week coming, and I am just for the given a chance, I'm presently leading a team now. So it is where my chance of learning new things. And first, before I go there, I will be reading the articles which you have pointed us, and also I'll read those, and I could find some details on the in Google with the Wikipedia what is software testability. First, I'll understand my side before I approach to my manager whether it is a testability or not, and let's see how that goes. But yeah, I had the same thought for a Monday, but before that, I would like to prep myself. Yeah.
No, I was just I just wanted to.
No, I had the same thought, and it is really good because we have to bring up new things. Otherwise, it is that, like, we are just doing just kind of monkey testing every day, if I believe. So so that doesn't make any sense.
Actually, that's a good thing that you spoke about, Shiva. Even for the monkeys to test, the application has to be testable, right? So for you to do any monkey testing, also the testability aspect needs to be in there.
Yes.
I also see Arpita has joined. So Arpita,
Hello.
okay, you've already
Good
had
morning.
so you've had your morning coffee and also
Yes.
I'm just saying. What are your thoughts on testability? Have you had any challenges with regards to testability?
Yes, Brijesh. Every time when a new project comes, as you were mentioning, yeah, that's a very big challenge about testability. And we can see even many times because the test team are always coming at last. Requirements are ready, design is ready, even maybe the development has started and they suddenly think, okay, now we need someone to test actually. So that's where many industrial processes we fall behind because they do not have a mindset that even a small user, maybe a user can be the system engineer. We need to be go into the production. So is it testable for that system engineer if it goes to the machine, or if the software is released to the team? So these thoughts are never thought by the project management, and it's a very big gap which I have seen in most of the projects, and particularly because I'm always with the product lineup, and these questions comes every day. Even every day, you won't believe that most of the NPI processes are done half of the way, and there would be a design review where we will validate, and before 1 month of the validation design review, these questions will come. Okay, even this component is testable or not. So I think this is a very big challenge in the industry because they do not seek or think about the testing phase for any so reasons, and that's the reason we testers have to make this awareness grow in the industry or in the projects where we are working. A measurement is really tough. I won't be able to measure, I think, and never thought of this question came today, and it was very nice, Mahesh. Thanks for the question. But measurement is a little bit tough, but as you and Seema have mentioned both, yeah, we do things, testability kind of things like comparison between the previous product to the next product. So now we do something like we talk to the system engineers who have tested the previous product, and this product may be totally different. The machines are used differently, the software is different, but the architecture or the base foundation is same. So what we do a compare study, we ask them to test that and this, and then they tell us that, okay, this is something good, you can make better. And in these way, we are trying to measure, I don't know, measure, this won't be a correct word, but we are trying to judge our testability. So in few teams, we have done this way, and we believe that our customer is the system engineer or the quality control teams. So so QA does this. We are trying to set this process, but always we cannot, because all the stakeholders are not ready and they do not actually accept, oh, this is not testable. Even sometimes we say this is not testable, and you are asking us to do automation. How can we do that? So these questions do not come in their mind, and when we go and tell them, and it's half of the project, they realize, okay, this was what this part was never testable. So I think awareness is something we all should start and can start. Every organization would have different processes, and the testers or the testing team have to start thinking together with I feel mainly with the design and process team plus the requirement team. This is very important because we always fall down to understand the requirements, the high level requirements, and even high level architecture. Most of the testers also don't know what the architecture is, and we are going to test the product or the quality of the thing. And that's somewhere the awareness is important, because testers are not given that chance, or we are not trying to seek or trying to learn that chance. So it's totally depends on the testing team, their thought process and their mindset, maybe. I would add here.
Some very good points mentioned by you, Arpita. Thank you. Mahathee, I haven't heard from you.
It is relatively new, but I've heard of it the first time in Rickard Edgren's book on test design. So for me, my understanding on testability is that is it easy to check and test the product? That's what I understand of testability. And under it, I think we would be dealing with certain aspects like traceability, controllability, or observability, or monitoring things, and stability of the system, or auditing the system with different kinds of information and hypothesis. So this is my understanding.
Okay, so I have a question. Okay, we often, in our testing journeys, we often speak about things like smoke tests and sanity tests. And one of the objectives that we specify with those tests is to establish testability or further testability of the application. We do some initial tests and then check if it is testable or not. Is that enough, or there needs to be something more? Do you think those tests are enough, or what's your take?
What do you mean? I mean, what do you mean enough? I mean, enough from what context?
So, just to give a green signal that, okay, the system is testable. Okay, are those smoke or sanity tests or whatever people call it, it is different in different contexts and different people name it differently. So are those initial tests enough to establish that any product is testable enough?
Okay, I got it. I mean, again, we are getting to a point where, we are trying to measure the testability. It's saying, we would carry some smoke and sanity and, ensure, I mean, we could certify that the whole product is testable. I mean, that would not work. I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, for example, somebody spoke about A/B testing, Canary testing, and everything, right? I mean, Facebook conducts them regularly.
Yeah.
But not everybody are equipped. Not everybody have everything at their fingertips to do Canary and A to B testing, right? I mean, it's architectural decisions, it's budget decisions, and lot more factors have to, come in to, even establish the testability of what we're talking in the production, right? I mean, it's not very easy. Like, Facebook does that great, but for everybody, that's still a challenge. I mean, people have to factor it, right? So to your point, I mean, carrying out just some proof of concept and certifying that a product is 100% testable, not an accurate statement. I mean, that would be hard.
Yeah, so I was actually trying to think of ways of measuring, and that's where it occurred to me that a lot of people rely or try to answer the question of testability from that perspective. That is why I was thinking, because you asked a question, Mahesh, how do we measure it? So I was trying to sort of, in my head, think of ways in which we could possibly do it. But I think there are some fundamental questions to be answered before that, like Seema raised, okay. And others have also spoken about it. So before we go to the measurement, I think it is, first of all, important to establish if it is testable or not, or if we have even thought about testability. Now, another thing that testability compounds into or runs into or grows into is automatability. Okay, so people say, let's go ahead and automate the application, or automate some of the tests that we're thinking about. Obviously, for reasons like you want faster time to market and you want faster feedback, and automation is a good way of getting faster feedback and to get you to the customer fast, which is, of course, a good thing. But to establish if an application is automatable or not, or what parts of it are actually automatable, testability becomes the underlying factor, is what I would think. What do others think?
I think you're totally right. After Arpita mentioned it, I was about to say, for automation, quite often we are ready to learn the language, we are ready to learn the framework. We put in so much of effort to automate all sorts of stuff, but then we don't think about where do we want to run it? What do we want to do with it? And quite often I've seen we run it on environments which are not stable, not even having the correct data that is needed. So it is not testable in the right ways that we would like to test it. But we have automated tests. We're able to run automated tests. Now, what does it do? What does the outcome, pass, fail? What does it mean if we're running it on such unstable environments, or if we don't even know what the report is supposed to tell us? What is the story it's going to tell when we say 2 tests have failed, 10 tests have passed? It doesn't mean a thing if you don't know where you're running it and what does it mean. And also about smoke tests, regression tests, which you mentioned earlier. We have smoke tests, regression tests, but if we don't know where we're going to run it, how we're going to run it, is the application testable? Is it stable? It's like putting a cart before the horse. We have everything, but we don't know what we're going to do with it. It's there. It doesn't mean a thing. And regarding, I think Mahesh's question is thinking about it. Well, how do we measure? I've not measured ever, but there's one thing that we do, which I've done before, is when we do the defect rate and when we measure how many defects are found in production, we also see how many of those features were mentioned as these were not testable, or they were close saying we'll test it in production, and then bugs come out of that, and then we tie it back saying these were features which were tested, which we had everything set up properly, and a lesser number of percentage of bugs, or the features that were not testable, and then how many bugs. So that's the only thing I think I've used for measuring. I don't think I've used anything else.
And Mahesh has triggered a good line of thought,
Yeah.
In terms of being able to establish measurability of testability, if I may put that.
I think before I go into measurability, I would focus more on bringing the awareness of testability in the first place. And even ask that question, not just from testers for that matter. It's even the rest of the team, whether it's product owners, the way the story is written, the way the feature is broken down, and also from a perspective of developers. It's many times I've heard this saying, we're wasting time trying to build something just to make it testable, or it is too expensive to make it. Why can't you just test it in production? So these are and often the test team, they say, yeah, that's fine. let's just back out. That question needs to come, that we need to start challenging more often and asking for it more often. This is basics of what we do and how we do. What's the point of testing something somewhere which doesn't give you an accurate answer at all? So before, yes, I'd like to understand, Mahesh, if you ever come, if you know the answer to how do you measure, please do share. I'd love to know that.
Yeah.
But, even before reaching there,
I'll put this question to James back today. I'm meeting him today. So I'll throw this question to him and let's see how
Of
he
course,
answers.
that'll be an interesting conversation.
it'll be interesting.
If you can manage to record that and share it with us, that'll be really nice.
Sure.
Even before reaching there, what I like I said, I'd start with the basics and the foundation. When you write your tests, when you write your automated test, manual test, or you're just doing testing, know where you're testing it. Without knowing what you're doing, where you're doing, how do you know whether what you're doing is right or wrong?
So environment as such, the environment where you are testing plays a very important role in determining testability of the application. You can't discount environment when you're talking about testability. That's one thing. So, I think in the blog page that I showed about resource availability for testing, I think environment plays a very important role there. And if your environment itself is messed up, then no matter how brilliant your tests are, you are going to fumble. You are going to find it troublesome for you to test. And you may be looking for the issue with the application, but it may be the environment which may be causing all the trouble. Now, talking about it a little further, what are the things that you would go ahead and do in terms of improving testability at a requirements level itself? What is it that would be your recommendation as testers to the product owners who are actually capturing those requirements and bringing them those to the team? So what are your thoughts on that aspect?
One quick comment there, Brijesh, and to what Seema and Arpita added. I mean, I'm not trying to push back, but I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. So don't you think, that agile methodology, the sprint that we are, following today should address a lot of those testability challenges that we have, in terms of during the beginning of the sprint, we should be able to identify all the testability requirements, across, right? Including the backlog refinement, product requirements itself. Don't you guys think the sprint should be a good setup for us to handle the testability challenges?
Should, right? It should have been considered right at the beginning when we were thinking about the project, the architecture, the whole roadmap, the sprints as well, up to the point of us planning for the sprint. That is also where we need to consider, but we don't. That's the problem.
Yes, that's the problem.
We are not considering as a problem, and that what I've learned recently is that we're not aware about this term called testability. Many of us, I keep telling my team, ask, how do I test it? When you're sitting in refinement sessions, when you're sitting in planning sessions, ask, how do I test this? Don't just understand how it works in the application. Don't just understand what happens where in the whole architecture. Also try and understand, how can I test it? Where can I see a change? What can I see that will help me test it better? So you're right. It needs to be there everywhere, but it's not there.
And that brings me back to my question. So if you are looking at the requirements for the next sprint, okay, you are looking at it and you want to pick up items. How do you establish testability right up front? how do you go and tell your product owner, hey, you know what, I don't see testability being considered in the requirements that you have given me? How do you establish that?
Brijesh?
Yeah.
A follow-up question on that, like, as you said, like, how we will do that, and Seema and Mahesh were also, like Arpita were also asking it. But generally, my side of the question is like, in case, like, as you everyone say, we are following a channel, but in case if the organization is not involving us in those kind of like stages of discussion, and as you were asking us to do, like, not asking, like, if you want to do the testability in initial stages of it, how we need to bring up to our team or manager or to the offshore people that to involve us in such kind of a levels, so that we can also get understand what is the product more about, and that gives us an edge to start our executions after we get into system testing or regression testing, right? Because that helps us when we all discussion happen in the initial stages, as Mahesh or uh, Arpita or Seema was saying, right? So how we can approach to our people, our managers, with the same.
So, Shiva, maybe Brijesh, I would like to answer this. I don't know how the teams work on this part, but we have recently seen a lot of change when we started to have a permanent weekly meeting with all the stakeholders. And because our team first, we tried to understand is the product is testable or not. Even the environment, as Seema mentioned, we are given a crappy environment, which is not at all simulated with the machines which would be used in the production, and we don't know how to test it. So we raise these questions, showing them or taking a few of the features or the epics every week, and we show live. Actually, we do a video demo. This is something which we have started since 1 year, and we have seen, because this question came to us last year, and we had this problem a lot, and no one was understanding why the test team is not able to test it. So this is something, an eye-opening session to everyone, all the stakeholders. But we made it sure, the test team made it sure that we initiate it and drive it. So maybe the test teams have to start initiating and driving it. Then in future, the other teams would be understanding, or the developers would talk to their uh, developers on other project, and they will say, okay, this is something which we never knew and we came to know from this project. So that discussions happens in their level, and they understand. So I think we have to start that initiation somewhere as a team, when the whole team are in the same page. I know it's very tough to get into that position. We actually fought a lot on that, but maybe you can try to bring all the stakeholders together, run through the live demos in the environment, with the crappy environment which you are given, and see how the reaction or the feedback is, and make sure that this is a mandatory thing for a few weeks. We have done that actually recently. So I don't know, this is something, a new example.
Thank you, Arpita, for adding that. And this is something that I would also recommend teams to do. And when I consult, I normally give this as an advice to the customers, that a demo, when we talk about a demo, it's ideally the perception is that it is to show that things are working. Okay. But I think demos are also a place to show that things are not working.
Not working. Yes.
Okay. And that's what I recommend to a lot of teams. I remember when I first started this practice, we were asked to test an application which was using Silverlight components, Microsoft Silverlight components, and we were asked to test it using QTP 10, which did not have the ability to identify Silverlight components. So since I had proposed a demo, And so everybody was excited and they wanted to see what is working. And I said that this is a demonstration of the challenges that we have with regards to testing. And everybody was surprised, especially the project sponsor. And he said, I have never looked at demos from that perspective, that it could be a tool to show what is not working also. And we put in that practice that though we had sprints running for 2 weeks, and at the end of every sprint, there was a demo scheduled, we had weekly demos to show them things that were not working or things that were not happening. And we could schedule, if there was a bit of a challenge, we also added a flexibility of scheduling a session at the moment in time which needed special attention. We said, okay, we will do a demo and we will show it, that this is not working. Let's pay attention to that. And that added in our ability to convey that there are testability challenges that we need to look at and that we need to think of. Now, again, I would like to go back to the question that I had asked before this, and I want to know if you are supposed to bake in testability from the requirements phase, what would be something that you would ask the product owner or whoever is gathering the requirements? What is it that you look for?
I mean, right at the beginning of the project, if you start it, the questions will be very different to, I don't know, I'm not, majority of the projects I've worked as, it's already halfway through or somewhere in the middle, and it's already running. And it doesn't matter whether you're at the beginning, you're at the top 10% or middle or.
Okay. So let me make it easier for you.
You have to start asking. The point is, ask, irrelevant where you are.
Yes.
At the beginning or at the end, it doesn't matter. Even so, we regularly have meetings with DevOps, the team, to make sure we get what we want. The question first is, what do you want? Once you know what you want, that will help you test, then ask the right people. And that includes product owners, where in terms of when you're planning in your refinement sessions, and when the way the stories are broken down, to bring it to their awareness, because they may not understand that the way the story is broken down may not be testable in its full as a feature. And then it is about asking the dev team of what is involved in this, and then also speak to the DevOps team, which we do very regularly. Another thing that we had also done is, after the production bugs that were found, do root cause analysis and find what caused this. And there are many times which will lead you to the point where it didn't work here, it works here. It doesn't work in production, it works in staging. It works in staging, it doesn't work in production. Or it looks like this here, but it behaves like that there. So then you try and understand what is this that is causing the differences, which means you're not testing in the right conditions. Then you go back to the dev team, the DevOps team, get your environment sorted. It could also be that the data that is set up in pre-production environments, whether it's the feature branch or it's the staging or dev branch, is very different in nature to production. Then change the kind of data, try to get realistic data to be able to test it. So the discussion is not just with one person, it's with different people. And the nature of the ask also keeps changing depending upon what you're working on. There are times when you're working just on a functionality which is independent on its own. And then it could be that it's integrating with an external system, or it could be payments, it could be something else. How do I then go about testing it? That question needs to come often, and it needs to be raised often. It can't be that you raise it at the beginning of the project and I'm done with it. It can't be that at the beginning of the sprint and I'm done with it. It could be that you'll uncover while you're testing, oh, if this is like if I'd set it up differently, maybe I could have tested it better. You could still ask for it.
Right. So Sandeep has been, listening in. Sandeep, your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for the nice inputs on these questions. And I was taking my notes as usual. I do sometimes, but sometimes, as usual, but sometimes. So I have 2 to 3 examples for the testability. So, and maybe it can be easy to understand what kind of requirements we are talking about. So last year we were doing a relational database to NoSQL database migration. So it was a technical requirement. There was no change as such in the functionality aspect of the system overall. Now, relational database testing is slightly easy. You have tools and client tools, and you can connect to the servers and all that stuff. But how would you understand what are the schema changes and all that stuff happening in the NoSQL database? There is no relation as such, right? So it was a challenge. But when the solution was proposed, we were thinking from the day one, like Mahesh mentioned, hey, you have sprints, right? And as a tester, I need to ask, how would I test it, right? Because my model of the data is going to change, right? The representation is going to change. The storage has going to be changed, right? Everything is going to be processed in cache, right? So how do we do this? So we asked to build a tool to help us, a GUI tool, right? Now, this also addressed the question, I guess, to some extent of measurability, of testability, right? So how much time it took to build that tool? What is the cost of that tool? And what is the value? And using that tool, how soon we can get the information that we are looking for? So this time, cost, and value versus the cost of building that tool that could help us in bringing that information. So, and testers are given less time. We know that, right? There are different estimation techniques and all these things, but we have to understand this reality. There are time constraints. And as a skilled tester, I need to understand in that given time constraints and budget constraints, how could I align with the context or challenge the context and ask with authority what I require, right? So that is one. So time, cost, value, and building the tool that gives me the testability support versus what is the value of that information that I'm getting out of it. That is one aspect. Another example I give, let's say building product from scratch. When we're talking about requirements, is application requirement is everything. You talk about environmental requirements. We talk about technical requirements. We talk about technology requirements, right? This is where we ask questions with respect to, okay, how the architecture looks like, in what infrastructure you are placing this solution in, right? And then the conversation starts, right? Building the mental model of the application, what kind of, and I'm taking notes, I just put it down this way. So I put it down architecture first. Are we as a tester, are we in the discussion on the architecture? And at least are we seeing it? Are we asking questions with respect to the architecture? Everything is in cloud these days, right? Mahesh mentioned a very important point. Everything is in cloud. Private and public partnership is happening, right? So how do you, as a tester, as a testing team, how you understand that aspect? Infrastructure, you mentioned about observability, right? So either you are on AWS, for example, if you're talking about cloud solutions, you're AWS or you're on Azure DevOps, right? You have to understand what are the observability tool, application insight, metrics, and all that stuff. What technology, front end or back end technology you are using in building your systems, right? A lot of application, if I talk about web, because I mostly on the web application side, mobile very less, especially your native side. So what technology you're using, right? Users and their usage, right? What are the risks you're talking about? Okay. Scenario testing, let me say for this example, right? Scenario testing, whatever techniques we apply, right? When the product will be used in the real world, right? You cannot imagine, how the user is going to use your product, right? Multiple scenarios, right? In those multiple scenarios, how data is entered, how it is traveling, what kind of risk it is producing. All these aspects, when combined together, you get an understanding of testability. And it's a team effort. It's a team effort. That's my aspect of how you look into the requirement aspect. Not from the functional, how it is going to be used. Not as a user, I won't saw that. No, as a whole team how we're going to build this solution, right? Because developers also need testability,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's my take on.
Exactly, and you mentioned something very interesting. Okay, so the format, as a user, we often rely or we often try and enforce that, saying, okay, this format will give me a good understanding of what it looks like. But like I said earlier, we speak about SMART in terms of goals. We
Yep.
have, but I have a slightly different take. I apply SMART on requirements. Okay, it is the requirement specific. Okay,
Yes.
is my requirement manageable? Okay, can I manage it? Okay, is my requirement achievable? Okay, is my requirement reliable enough? I mean, is there some information missing, or is it complete? Is it accurate? And finally, the T is my requirement testable? So that
Exactly.
is something that I
You're right.
always ask my product owner. So even if you don't write the as a user, so that format doesn't matter to me, as long as
Exactly.
you've
Yes.
covered,
You're right.
as long as you've covered these 5 aspects. So transitioning from SMART goals to SMART requirements is something that I look at as a good step towards improving testability, because that's at a very early stage, at a requirement stage, you are asking that question: is it testable?
Yep.
Is it testable?
Right.
Is the product owner thinking from testing perspective early? If he's the guy who's gathering all the requirements, bringing it to the table, and like you said, Sandeep, it is equally important for the developers to have that testability built in. How do you expect them to build unit tests? Okay, or good quality unit tests if it is not testable enough early? Okay,
Right.
how do you expect them to write the proper assertions in their code when they are running through the whole exercise if they don't know what it actually means? Okay, if they are only looking at, so a lot of times developers say, oh, you know what, we if it is a text box, then we build a text box and see if the text box is good enough, and it can actually we can input text and things like that. And I'm like, what? So these kind of questions that helps us understand testability better early in the stage, I mean, very helpful. Good questions that need to be asked to the product owners. Then when it comes down, when the analysis is happening, when the design is happening, architecture is getting built up, are you thinking about testability from an architecture perspective? Will the systems architecture and my test architecture have a balance? Can they talk to each other, or is my test architecture a part of the overall product architecture? Is my test strategy in line with the product development strategy? So that I look at testability from that perspective. Have that dialogue, have that conversation going, and ask questions, ask people, seek involvement, and like Arpita was also mentioning earlier, I mean, schedule demo sessions to show that things don't work. Don't hesitate. Okay, things don't work I mean to say things are not testable. Okay, you say that. How do I test it? People will say, I don't understand what you mean. Show it to them. Okay, do a demo, show it to them that you are stuck, you don't know. Because a lot of times people don't get it when you say it is not testable. They're like, I don't know what you mean. So you may talk about it, but the other person will never get a perception of what challenges do you face. Then you can show in terms of the environment or the data and what all other aspects that you're considering. So that is what my approach is for requirements. Now, another person who has been very silent throughout the call is Mr. Teapot. So have a go at it.
And just one thing
Sandeep.
before I conclude on that
Yeah.
thing. Being as a developer and being as a business side as well, I empathize with all these, because it's a whole team effort, right? So if somebody is not understanding what I'm talking about, it's like, okay, this is the right spot for me to jump in. Tell everybody what is happening, right? Because when they don't know, right, it's a opportunity for me to understand how can we make this communication better, right? Because one person understand, they communicate in their team, it's like progression, right, compounding, right, and they tell each and everyone in the team, and that helps a lot. So I have been one place one time, being a developer, and was like, what are you talking about, right? So understand. So I empathize, and it helped me a lot, right? So yeah, that's my take on empathy with these kind of questions which are sometimes unanswered.
Well, empathy is one big aspect of testability. Ultimately, the user is going to use the application. And so if you don't empathize and if you don't look at the application from that perspective, what are you testing? Okay, so that's one very important aspect that I can think of. Yeah, Teapot. Are you there? Seems like, I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah, one quick comment I had, Brijesh, was regarding requirements, right? Whatever you and Sandeep mentioned, we also follow similar things where basically all the backlog items are well defined. I mean, independent, negotiable, valuable, estimatable, small, testable, right? I mean, so that's very important. So firstly, we will have to bring the cultural change and make everybody understand what is testability. Then it becomes much easier for people to start defining testability around every backlog requirement. So that becomes very easier. But we've been following that. I mean, we have multiple products running, like where we are migrating from monolith to microservices. We are continuing to support a legacy system product, and there are a lot of different requirements. Some of the challenges around testability that I don't know, people might come across is, I mean, we definitely have come across. I mean, sometimes building testability is greater than actually building the product itself.
Yes.
So it's important. How are people going to address that? Are they going to tell, okay, the cost is very high, I don't need testability, just check that out, right? So that's one thing. And second thing is, they compromise cost testability for cost. Like for example, we had a fleet of AWS environments running on AWS, and they said, let's move them all to private cloud because the cost is uncontrollable, right? Even if it means, we're going to compromise on testability. So testability has a direct correlation with the cost.
Yeah.
Right. So that's something, we'll have to fight out with the management team. I mean, it's hard sometimes.
Yeah, I can't think of, these challenges and some of the things that
totally agree, Mahesh. I mean, time, cost, and value. So
yes, absolutely.
We have to, the conviction is important here. Why I want that, why you want that as an organization, and what will happen if you don't do that.
Yeah, why we as a project need that. Actually, that's something which should come, the we factor of the project. Yeah, sometimes we do not follow that because testers are always secluded and we do not come in that project. So yeah, I totally agree with you guys.
I sometimes get a feeling with a lot of organizations that testing is an afterthought.
Yeah.
Okay, if something goes wrong, then people start thinking about testing. And aspects like, and I keep saying this, then aspects like performance and security are afterthought of an afterthought. Okay, so unless a customer complains that the data has been stolen, nobody looks at security testing. And unless the customer complains, oh, this is too slow for me, or I am too uncomfortable, they will not look at performance testing. But anyways, the point is, when you're talking about testability, are you already thinking about these aspects as well? Because how will I go ahead and make sure that I do good performance testing to make sure that the performance is good, or the non-functional aspects as well. So when I talk about testability, I talk about those aspects as well. So good discussion. We have 5 more minutes of allocated time. Does anybody else have any thoughts to share?
Yeah, Brijesh, I want to share. I got some food from your thought. Yeah, so this is something which I would say, and maybe I have seen in my experience that if high in higher management, if somebody is coming from the testing mindset, it makes much more easier for that project to bring this up. Because I have seen projects where there are no testers at all in the management, and everyone is messing up with the things. And in few projects I've seen that in higher management the test mindset is there because a tester or a test related manager architecture is there. So in these way, what happens, they bring this topic into the team or in the project, that we should have this mindset from the beginning, and that lots help the whole project to run smart or yeah, I would say in a smoother way than many of the projects where we have seen that we have struggled to do that. So I think maybe the teams also have to start thinking that people with these mindsets should be there in our management level, that many teams forget to think, or they do not really think of. Maybe this is something I would like to add here.
No, I think that's a very interesting aspect. And, talking about testability, I think we covered a lot of interesting aspects. And the crux, if I may just summarize, is that, we need to be a lot more vocal. Awareness is the key. We need to be asking those questions early. We need to be asking those questions across the board. We need to probably demonstrate the challenges that we have with regards to testability. And the onus lies on the testers to talk about it. And we should have more discussions. So when we go back to our projects, maybe if we have not spoken about testability for some time, maybe it's a good idea to rake up those kind of thoughts in the team's mind that, okay, we are also starting to look at it from that perspective. Well, final ritual, if you all can come on camera, we'll take a picture. Okay, before we, Mahesh and his race cars. I just love it. Mahesh does it.
One last comment is, testability keeps evolving. I mean, we will not be done with the requirements. I mean, if you think you capture all the testability in the requirements, you're wrong.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
Of course. You will have to think of testability from requirements to architecture to your code. Even when you are writing your code or people are writing, they should be thinking about testability. So it is an evolving thing, absolutely. Mahathee, Teapot, wake up call in case you guys finished your coffee. All right. Anyways, cheers. Did I get it? I don't think so. Why am I not getting it? Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for spending time on this Sunday morning or afternoon. Good discussion. Lots of learning for all of us. Good talking points. Thank you all for contributing. Had a lot of fun. We'll see you in the next episode next week. Another interesting topic. We talk about test design next week. And that's going to spark some thoughts. I'm sure all of us have got our own ideas about test design, and there's a lot to learn there. Especially I am looking at that session because there's some of us have the tendency of looking at test design in a very blinkered way, but there is a lot more than what is being taught in ISTQB, or when you look at test design from an ISTQB perspective, it's just a few things that are being told. But test design is much wider. People have written about it extensively. There are books available. There are notes available. There are discussions that happen. So let's reconvene next week and have a wonderful session. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Thanks,
Thank you,
Brijesh.
everyone.
Have a good time, everyone.
Happy Sunday.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.